My name is Stephanie Heflin, and I will be facilitating tonight's session. At this time, I'd like to now introduce our presenter, Jonathan Vu, who is a GGUSD school psychologist at La Quinta High School. He will be leading us through our session, The Effects of Social Media on Mental Health. It's all yours, Mr. Vu.
Thank you so much.
Yes, the crowd's going wild. You can hear them.
I can hear them, and I'm also doing that just to see how the interpreters are going to interpret that. But I saw that there's 80 students here, which is amazing to see. Mental health is such an important thing right now. At the same time, we're spending even more time on social media as a result. So our goal today is just to educate you guys, stimulate your brain, and have you think about some of the ramifications of social media and how it affects your mental health. And as already shared by Ms. Heflin, if you have any questions, feel free to add it in the chat. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll try to answer some of them. All right. We're going to start off with a little bit of a temperature check. If you could maybe add into the chat how you're feeling today on this Chihuahua scale. I didn't make this presentation. I'm here just spreading the message, but I believe in it. But how are you guys feeling today?
Oh, you are? Okay, perfect.
A lot of 7s and 8s. Nice. Some people are feeling 8s, 9s. These are intense feelings. I thought maybe we'd have a couple more 3s, but a couple of 3s. A 9. Okay. Thanks, guys. You guys are clearly paying attention. Thank you. We're going to move on to the next slide, okay? Glad to hear that there's seems to be a whole spectrum of feelings today. Let's see here. All right, so we're going to start off with talking about what this presentation is going to be about. Sure, it's about social media, but maybe a little more about it so we can kind of have a basic structure of what we're going to be learning today. We're thinking about social media and how important it is in our life because it builds and forms our relationships and in our lives as we're developing, as students. It's also something that can shape your identity. It's a great platform for people to express themselves, learn from other people as well. And it's also a curated jar of comparison. And what that is think of a purpose of a jar. It's to kind of contain something inside. And when you hop onto social media, it's similar to that. You kind of envelop yourself in the various things from advertisements to comments to challenges or pressures of social media as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. For that reason, because there's just so many elements that come into play here, it does intrinsically or naturally get linked to our mental health. So we have to think about and be a little more mindful about the influences of social media on our minds and how it might affect our actions as well. So here's a picture that I want you guys to take maybe a second to look at. Tell me what you think, what you see. Crowded concert. Maybe it's Kanye on stage. They all want to see what he's going to do today. What's interesting too, some people are saying, yeah, everyone's recording with their camera. Some of which are recording the artist, others are just on their phone. Yeah. And it's interesting, and there is a blind gentleman on the right. He's there just to listen to music. So even though he has a visual impairment, he's still there to enjoy. And it's just interesting to see a majority of the people here, are on their devices when they're missing out on a full experience that they should be having instead of being on their phone. Yep, or actively listening, right? Good terms. So when I talk about students, and this we're going to be referencing really students from age 14 at the end of high school, so 18-ish. This is a crucial part in your guys' lives where you develop your emotions and how you socialize with other people. And you also face a lot of pressures that, I didn't face when I was growing up.
There it is.
So one of those.
Yeah, I want to go back.
I'm sorry. The pressures that I would deal with is, getting out of high school and going on to college, getting a car. But then now you guys have the same kind of challenges with the addition of social media as well. So again, another important reason to be a little more mindful about what it means to be on social media in how we conduct ourselves on that platform. It is worth noting too, 5% of young people are thought to be affected by social media where they've reached kind of a level of addiction. Addiction is something that might, where you're doing something for a very long period of time that affects your relationship, your daily functioning. And you have to think to yourself, I mean, when you're on social media for that amount of time, over time it becomes a habit and can turn into an addiction. And it begs the question too, when you're on social media for that amount of time, it's kind of interesting if you know more about your influencer than the actual family that you live with. So again, got to be more mindful about social media and how often we're spending our time on there. Other negative effects, anxiety disorders can come from this. 1 in 6 young people will have some experience of an anxiety disorder at some point in their lives. The rates of anxiety and depression in young people have also increased 70% over the past 25 years. So there's just been exponential growth. And when we're thinking about anxiety, it can get very specific. Aside from feeling overwhelmed, getting a sense of panic or those types of challenges, it might result in you having difficulty leaving the house, attending school. These other anxieties can lead to generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, or obsessive compulsive disorder. Social media, what it does is it can create unrealistic expectations for you as young people, where you have this sense of self-consciousness, perhaps low self-esteem, because you're trying to reach this this level of perfectionism or how you are represented. And so that from that, it can manifest into anxiety. There's also been growing evidence to link social media with depression as well. Research show that with social media, for people who spent maybe 2 hours per day, they were independently associated with poor self-rating of themselves, their mental health, and increased psychological stress and suicidal ideation as well. So it's interesting that though social media has been a great thing, it also has some of its challenges as well. Now, similar to the other ones, I want you to look at this picture and tell me what you guys think and see, and you can share that in the chat. Someone says social media is their comfort. Yeah. Some people are saying it's kind of his way of keeping himself sane. Right. Some could say it could be weighing him down. We don't know how heavy the blanket is as well. Yeah, just a thinker for you guys here. Man's wrapped in social media without realizing it. Yeah, definitely. Good points, guys. Yeah, I really like this point that someone shared. Instead of using family members or friends to comfort themselves, this person could be using social media for that. All right, let's move on to the next slide here. Thank you guys for sharing. Those are great answers. Aside from mental health challenges, that can also come from sleep or lead to sleep challenges. And it all feeds into itself, becomes this kind of cyclical thing. You know, you start off with a lack of sleep. From there, you start to feel tired as you're going about your day. That tiredness leads to challenges in coping with whatever stressors you have in your daily life. Because that difficulty, you start to have low self-esteem, questioning why aren't you able to work through these difficulties. Then you start to feel stressed, worry, and then because of that, you might have trouble sleeping, and again, the cycle continues. So do be mindful about how mental health can lead to poor sleep and vice versa. And something to think about too, when you're using your phone, there's a blue light that's emitted from it, and it does kind of change your circadian rhythm and basically your internal clock, and can make your mind think that you should be staying awake when really it's nighttime. So a lot of factors come into how social media can affect sleep. Body image is also a concern as well. There's just millions of photos uploaded on Instagram almost every day, every hour. So there's an endless potential for young adults to be drawn into appearance-based comparisons. And if you think about influencers, which is now kind of the current way of advertising, you have these individuals who are either well-dressed or have lots of money, or standing in front of a very expensive car or something like that. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to this individual, asking ourselves, why aren't we like this or that? But we got to stop using the wrong measuring stick. You know, everyone's a little different, and yourself to someone else's life and assume your experiences are the same as theirs would be unfair to you. So something to think about as well is how it can affect your body image of yourself. With all the time spent online, there's also the opportunity for cyberbullying. There's been a rise in instant messaging. This creates kind of a quick way to contact other people or perhaps circulate different messages or images. So though social media is a great way to express yourself, it's also very important to be mindful about the words that we share, the information that we share, whether through photos or through words, because unfortunately, those things can be used against you. And so the victims of cyberbullying are also more likely to experience depression, anxiety, and self-harm. And cyberbullying is a very interesting thing in that with bullying, you know, if it were to happen somewhere, at least you can remove yourself from it. But with cyberbullying, it's just constant. Being online, there's also FOMO. I'm sure you guys have heard that. Fear of missing out. You're looking on social media, you're seeing your best friend at a party or eating the best hamburger. I don't know what you kids eat now, but there's a lot of different things online that, you know, people like to portray or share that they're experiencing together. And because they're having these enjoyable activities while you're maybe at home, you start to have this sense of FOMO. And FOMO is actually associated with lower mood and lower life satisfaction. Again, we end up comparing ourselves to what we don't have. We don't have to share about this one, but I'll just go through this comic here. I definitely relate to it. You know, just gonna check out some cool pics. Gonna look at the beach. Oh, looks so nice. Oh, I want to be there right now. Why can't I be there right now? Why not me? So yeah, that's sometimes our thought process, and we might not even know it, especially if just going online, checking constantly becomes our norm. But again, we have to be mindful about what we're seeing and what it means to us. It is a different perception of how life is. It's a person's highlights in their life as well. Now, there are some positive effects of social media, obviously. I mean, you guys get great opportunities to obtain emotional support, community building as well. I know that Discord is a big platform that students are using now, not just to play video games, but there's been servers that have been created where it's a place for you guys to share your emotions and feelings together, which I think is great. Social media, again, we mentioned this, it's a way for you to express yourself, way to develop your own identity, maybe through sharing photos, parts of your life, your creativity. It's a great place to make friends, maintain and build friendships as well. So there are definitely some positives with social media. Now, of course, too much of a good thing can become a bad thing. When we think about social media, and we talked a little bit about addiction earlier, we have to think about how these platforms are developed and the purpose. when we share something online, whether that be a photo or maybe a comment, we're curious about whether we're going to get that like button clicked or different emojis. Are they going to smash the like button? We're driven by these likes and followers because we find it compelling to see what that response might be. And you can describe it as like a slot machine experience. You're just testing the waters, you're going to post whatever just to see what type of reaction or response you get. And you get these bumps of reward. It activates something in your brain called the limbic system. It's the same thing that the same system that gets activated when you're addicted to something as well. You crave that like or that comment or whatever reaction that may be. And when we're thinking about social media and how they come about, there's a lot of research involved with social media. A lot of data is obtained with every like and picture that you click on. It starts to curate to you because they want you to be on their platform longer, and they want you to not only use it longer, but have more people use the platform as well, because with more people, it's more money for them as well. So again, when we're just unconsciously jumping onto these platforms and not thinking about these things, it can become a challenging thing and become an addiction perhaps. So again, we want to think actively about the choices that we're making online and how we conduct ourselves and the ramifications. Now with social media, it can also affect us physically. We're less likely to move. It's hard to, Instagram or comment on something while you're running around. So typically we're just pretty stagnant in one place. It can affect us financially as well. We talked about influencers, advertisements. They're constantly trying to present you with these products because they want you to buy it, whether you need it or not. They make it seem like you need it. So it has affected a lot of people financially for that reason. We also tend to gravitate towards social media to feel less bored, but then it makes us less open to just being okay with being bored. So there's a psychological effect, because it's okay to be bored and just explore your own thoughts, be mindful. It also affects us socially as well. We have such a large generation of people now looking down at their phones than actually looking at other people when they're talking. So what about tools for change, Mr. Vu? What do I do? There's so many bad things. I don't know. Just kidding. There's a couple things you can think about. One thing is you can't just go cold turkey on this, meaning I'm just going to stop social media as a whole. You're asking yourself to change your behavior that you've been so used to for months, years. It's important to maybe take a couple of steps, maybe even just asking yourself these questions, I think would be a good first step into being more mindful about the choices that you're making online, what you're doing, and what you are exposing yourself to. Maybe figure out ways where you can challenge yourself, being more tolerable of boredom. Again, we're trying to be more active, proactive in how we're thinking about social media. Think about how, so the way that we can look at this next tool is how you structure your life can also have a positive effect. So behavioral architecture, you have the capacity to design the world around you. You can set up times maybe to use your phone and when not to. I know some families, they have their phones thrown into a box while they're eating dinner. So when they're talking, they're actually talking with each other and not, mentally elsewhere. Maybe ask yourself too, the question of how many hours a day you spend on your phone. I know a lot of phones have ways to measure, screen time. So it'd be interesting to see how you can measure that and see how that decreases over time. Propinquity is an interesting concept as well. It means that, the things closest to us in physical proximity, they have a much bigger effect on our psychological experience of the world. When we went back to, when we were talking about influencers and our time spent on the phone, what you're doing is you're also making yourself gravitate towards these things. And again, those advertisements that constantly show up, it makes us feel or think that we need it. So again, being mindful about how you expose yourself to social media and utilize that time. And being mindful about just how you think about the world as well, I think is a helpful thing for you to be more cognizant about these challenges relating to social media. Perhaps setting stopping cues could be an option as well, setting an alarm. Maybe you want to give yourself 30 minutes of social media time for a period of time and do something else. Again, if we don't have these things in place, it's really easy to get lost and be stuck on social media. Again, it's quite a reinforcer. It activates our limbic system. So we have to be mindful of that. And that's more or less the presentation overall. So for now, let me check the time. We're 5 minutes before. Ideally, we had 15 minutes, but that's great. We have more opportunities for questions. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? These are just some references here. You can share it in the chat and I'll be able to see them. It just won't be shared with everybody else. Questions, jokes even, appropriate jokes, maybe?
Well, hopefully some of you are asking some questions in the chat for Mr. Vu. I do also want to encourage you, there is a ticket out the door. We'd like you to not leave yet, but to go ahead and click on that link at the appropriate time to make sure that you do fill out our survey for tonight's session. But we do encourage you to use this time to ask some questions of Mr. Vu regarding social media and its effects on mental wellness.
Okay, that's a couple of questions that come in so far. How has social media affected students, specifically our grades and statistics? Yeah, social media, I mean, we talked about a couple of main points. It affects body image, I think, in a negative way when we see it as a way to compare ourselves to kind of an unrealistic appearance. You know, people draped in very expensive clothes, it's because they're sponsored by whatever product it is or company it is that wants to, you know, sell something to you. And how does it affect your guys' grades? Well, your mental health is definitely a drive for you to complete things. A way I like to think about mental health, imagine it as a fuel tank, or I'm sorry, as a car. And you know, your fuel tank is the energy and the motivation that you have left. So when you need to get from point A to point B with more fuel and motivation and kind of that self-esteem, you'll be able to make it to the next thing. But when that's depleted, or you're not finding those things that helps replenish it in a healthy way, you know, it's going to be a struggle. So it's going to affect your motivation, which in turn could affect your grades and your ability to complete things and focus. So in focus, social media also plays a role in that as well. It's a very distractible area. It's really easy to get lost in it as well, lose track of time. So those are definitely, that's a great question. Another question was, what do you recommend to help with self-control on screen time? I think the best thing is to figure out what works for you. Unfortunately, I can't sit here and tell you there's one thing you could do and it'll work for you specifically. Everyone's a little different, but if you're taking the steps to think actively how you're utilizing your free time, that's already going to be a good thing. So I would definitely pay attention to how you respond to whatever changes you want to make, whether that be asking yourself more questions about, okay, what am I doing? And just being more proactive about your choices of being on social media and what your purpose is on being there. And I think another strategy that was already talked about too is just creating a time. You know, maybe there's a certain time of the day that you want to utilize for social media. And when it's out of that time, really try to challenge yourself and see if it works. Let's see here. Oh, more questions are coming in. Let's see. Oh, the question was, does it end at 5 minutes? No. It's just the time for us to answer questions. Sorry, guys, you still have to stare at my face. Let's see here. I'm sorry to cover this. How would one deal with the feeling of comparing themselves to others on social media? Do you recommend any methods for students to deal with anxiety? Yeah, this is a difficult one. You know, it's almost in our nature to compare ourselves because we want to be a better version of whatever it is that we think we want to be or need to be. To deal with this, you really need to ask yourself, okay, what am I looking at here? So let's say you're on social media, you see someone draped in Gucci and they're on a beach and they're eating a very expensive meal. Okay. And then at the bottom, they have a large, long philosophy on life and whatnot. I mean, this, and at the bottom, they tag, you know, Gucci. So think about how this person's portraying themselves. They're probably trying to sell you something a lot of the times in social media. And we'd also want to stray away from negative thoughts as well. Asking yourself, you know, why don't I have this, or why don't I have that, or I wish I could do this or be that. A way to combat that is taking a second to identify things you're grateful for. It could be something as small as I'm grateful for my dog. The point is for us to notice and be more cognizant about those positive things around us that we forget to think about in life. Let's see here. When you said to not immediately stop all social media, what progress steps could be taken to slowly distance yourself away from social media? I think one of the questions, I'm sorry, one of the answers was also on here too, and I'll just jump back to it for your reference. So I think a good start would be check what your screen time is. And that would be your baseline. Baseline meaning that's your typical time spent on social media. And screen time can also, I think it can be very specific. It'll show you which apps you're using. So maybe you can start with one app. If you're spending maybe 2 or 3 hours a day in total on Snapchat, maybe cutting down 15 minutes and see how that is, taking a log of that. And it's going to take some time, and I like that you use progress. It is going to be slow, but over time, as you can maintain this kind of proactive way of changing this portion of your life in relation to social media, you'll start to see some of the benefits, at least for you, whatever that may be. Perhaps more time spent with peers and friends and family, or more time spending things on your own, where maybe your favorite hobby. Yeah, someone made a really good point, and maybe I didn't present this in the way that was intended, but perhaps it might have seemed as though the presentation was indicating that people on social media have depression. Yeah, I don't agree with that either. So if people are interpreting it that as such, that is not the case. It's just been linked with onset of depression. So it may increase the likelihood in developing these things. It doesn't mean that you will immediately or will have it. It's just more about thinking about what these studies have shown us and how maybe we should think about how we spend our time on social media more proactively, not to just stray away from it. But I really appreciate that critique there. Yep, there are definitely some apps to keep on our phones that keep us away from certain apps or maybe create time frames for us. I know that on Chrome, there are definitely some apps you can, or sorry, what do you call those things? Plugins that you can download, and it can also create limits, and you can create a list of websites like Facebook or what have you that you want to avoid using too often. and you can create a schedule as well. So you type it in, it'll just tell you that this window was, this website was blocked because it's what you had set it up to do. So yeah, there are definitely some apps that you can utilize. Good question. Have you found yourself being addicted to social media or have it affect any aspect in your life? I'll be honest, I don't know if I would call it addiction, but with Snapchat, it was becoming very distracting in my life because my friends had so many things to share in their lives. And I was like, cool. But then it ended up being, oh, there's another one. And then I was finished looking at it, but then another one popped up. Just so many notifications. So I took it upon myself to just close that account. Not that I don't love my friends, I do. But if they want to share something with me, I'll just tell me in person. I think it'll mean a lot more for me to react with them and share it in person. And there's another question, social media. Personal experience, social media. Yeah. I can answer that one. How do we fix social media? How do we fix social media? I don't know if there is a magic solution to all this. Social media is going to be here to stay, and like I said, there are some major benefits to it. We just have to be proactive in knowing about the ramifications again and how it might affect us in a negative way. If blue light makes you stay awake, should we make everything red and yellow? No, the internet would be really bland. The purpose of that is that just think about how using your phone or looking at a screen at night can affect your sleep. But if that was a joke, I appreciate it. I like it. That's one of the questions was about addiction and how you know if you have it or not. I'm not here to diagnose anybody, and I don't want you guys to start to compare yourselves to it. If it gets to the point where you're having difficulty connecting with others, it's affecting your daily life and function to the extent where you cannot function, I would just recommend, instead of diagnosing yourself, reach out to an adult. I'm a school psychologist, and I know that at your schools there's a school psychologist or a school counselor available. And these people are more than able to check in with you, see how things are going. And if it really is a serious challenge, then they can also refer you out to some additional support as well. So, but yeah, I do like that you guys are being mindful about that. There was a question that said, for those who are struggling and have poor ratings of themselves, is it normal to even feel that way despite nothing is going on around them? Yeah, I definitely wouldn't invalidate your own feelings about, yourself. It's your own reality, whether or not you think something major is going on around you. Oftentimes people will say, I have so many good things to be happy about. I should be happy. I should all those things. That's not fair to you. Your feelings are completely valid. And it's important to acknowledge that and see maybe what it is that it's affecting you. Truthfully, even if to another person it may not seem like a huge problem, but it is to you. So that's okay to feel that way.
Mr. Vu, someone
Yes.
sent me a question about what to do if you think your friend is addicted and you're not sure how to have that conversation with your friend.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Distracted in their friendship.
Yeah, I'm sure your friend wouldn't appreciate you telling them they're addicted. There are definitely roundabout ways to talk with your friends, though. Using I statements is always a great way to express how you feel without putting blame on the person. And it also creates a really clear communication with the person in sharing how you feel. So it would typically start with I feel whatever that emotion might be. So maybe I feel hurt. And then you describe the action that took place that made you feel that way. I feel hurt or I feel ignored when you're on your phone while we're talking. Is it possible and we could try something different? I will say, if that's a conversation you want to have with your friend, it definitely needs to start with from a place of care. You know, if you put blame on somebody and you direct your finger at them and say that they're bad and they have something wrong with them, they're not going to want to listen. And that's completely understandable. I wouldn't either. So if you can talk with them and share with them how it affects you and how you care about them, I'm sure they'd be more open to talking about it. Great question, though. And worst comes to worst, if you are really seeing some difficult things, you can always let an adult know at school and maybe check in with them and see from there. Again, because every situation is a little different. I can't sit here and say that your friend's okay. There's a lot of things in the background that could be taking place.
And then also, Mr. Vu, I just had another question pop up. What do you think, the question is, what do you think about cancel culture in social media?
Oh, cancel culture. Wow, this is a spicy question. You guys are throwing spicy questions at me. What do I think of cancel culture? I don't agree with it completely because I think people are able to change and to judge a person based on their past when they're no longer that person anymore is unfair to them. But I think that's naturally going to be what will happen in society. You know, went from nothing going on, everyone just keeping quiet, to now it's completely extreme. And I think at some point we're going to reach a good medium where people are going to be more mindful about what they say or share and make comments about. And then we'll be at a better place. So that's my thoughts about cancel culture. Great, though. What is cancel culture? Do I want to Google it right now? Yeah, I don't know if I have a clear definition of it. I'd be silly to say that I know right at the top of my head. But let me see if I can find a better way of describing it for you guys. Okay, so it is in which someone is thrust out of social or professional circles. Yeah, so cancel culture is being ostracized or being thrown out of, for example, if someone said something on Twitter, they might get canceled for it, so they're no longer able to use Twitter and no longer have a platform and no one's willing to listen to them anymore. Example of that. Does social media reduce attention span? It'll keep you distracted, I'll say that. You know, people can spend so much time on social media focused. I don't think inherently it'll reduce your attention span, but it may create habits that seem like you are distractible. You know, you might constantly want to check your phone. So, okay, am I losing attention? Well, no, you're getting really used to the whole experience of social media, checking that like or seeing if someone responded to a picture. Thoughts on TikTok? I'm not a big fan of TikTok, though I know there are a lot of funny things on it. The question was, what are your thoughts on TikTok? I feel like I know a lot of people who might be addicted to that app. Yeah, it's a very popular app right now. A lot of people have been able to connect with each other and share funny things in their lives. Yeah, I'm kind of in between. I don't personally use TikTok, but I do know it's been a really popular thing.
Okay. Mr. Vu, are there any more questions in your chat?
One was a comment, and yes, there's one more question. Let's see here.
Because we have about 2 minutes, about a minute actually.
Okay. Is it normal to feel this way even if you don't have social media? Yeah, it's completely okay to have these challenging experiences. It doesn't have to be through social media. You know, you can still compare yourself without social media. So it's something to think about. How can you separate yourself from those negative things while on social media? If you're following somebody that is constantly with drama and you know, negative comments, you can definitely avoid them. You know, stop following that influencer perhaps. If there's someone on social media that is maybe bullying you or whatnot, you can block them from your social media as well. And there was a last question that showed up, but I don't know how we're doing with time right now.
We have a little less than a minute.
Okay, let me read it. What if you're not the one addicted to social media, but your parents are? How do you talk to them about it? Whoa, really great question. God, I wish there was something I could say about this question. I would definitely try to talk with them about it. I mean, how? Again, similar to the other question about how to talk to a friend about it, maybe start with an I statement. Again, not blaming your parents. For them, it might seem normal. And so out of nowhere, if you start to point your finger at them, it'll be really difficult for them to listen to you. So I would definitely start with that, but it all kind of depends on your relationship with your parents as well. Who made social media? I don't know. In 2007 is when the internet was created, so I guess you could say that. But
Okay.
yeah, those are all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vu. We'd like to express our thanks for you for coming in and presenting this evening to all of us. So round of applause, virtual round of applause, and the crowd going wild. You just can't hear us.